Good evening. I'm Bernard Green, Chair of the Brookline Select Board, and this is the meeting of the Select Board for January 7th, 2025. Let's start off with announcements and updates, and if you'll indulge me, I'd like to read a statement. It's a little long, but I think it's really important. I'm going to start off by saying welcome back to the new year, 2025. Unfortunately, tragedies hit over the holiday season. A major house fire on Sargent Road a day after Christmas. Fortunately, no one was injured. The death of a beloved former teacher of English at Brookline High School on December 29th, Barry Mark Schumann, after years of battling an illness. And the most tragic loss, the death of 4 members of the Goldstein family, Matthew, his wife Lila, and their daughters Valerie and Violet. They died from carbon monoxide poisoning at their vacation home in New Hampshire over the Christmas holiday. The home's gas heating system was determined to be the source of the carbon monoxide leak. The school community is probably well aware of this loss, but I think it's important to let the broader community know some of the details of the impactful lives of the Goldstein family, so that we do not think of this as just a school loss, but a loss for our entire community. Matthew Goldstein was a beloved math and health teacher at the Edith Baker School. He was a strong supporter of students and was the teacher responsible for the school's math league and its gender and sexuality alliance. Brookline Superintendent Linus Guillory said Matthew Goldstein was an exceptional educator and beloved member of the school community, and they are deeply heartbroken to learn of his passing. Mr. Goldstein's dedication to inspiring students and shaping young minds has left an indelible mark on all who had the privilege of knowing him. Dr. Guillory continued. Lila Goldstein was a proud graduate of Brookline High School class of 1988. She was a beloved and respected member of her class and remembered as a smart, kind, and admired student. Their daughter, Valerie Goldstein, was also an educator, working with Teach for America as a 5th grade instructor in Rocky Mount, North Carolina. She graduated from Syracuse University just last May. At Syracuse, she led a program to teach high schoolers career readiness and financial literacy. New Hampshire does not require carbon monoxide detectors in homes, unlike Massachusetts. The carbon monoxide detectors must be in working order and properly placed for them to provide sufficient protection. Important information and a helpful pamphlet can be found on the fire department's website using the link on the left side of the page for smoke detectors, and go to that webpage where you can click on a link labeled Guidelines for Meeting the Law's Requirements, which is about 3/4 of the way down on the page. So relative to that, Chief Sullivan has provided a statement from the fire department that provides some additional guidance on protecting your family from carbon monoxide poisoning. And because during the wintertime, carbon monoxide poisoning is an increasing danger, I'd like to read it. Brookline Fire Department joins with the entire Brookline community in mourning the tragic loss of life recently suffered by the Goldstein family. Carbon monoxide is a tasteless, odorless gas that is responsible for hundreds of accidental deaths in the United States every year, the vast majority of which could have been avoided if working carbon monoxide detectors were on hand. It is required under Massachusetts law to have carbon monoxide detectors in all residential properties that employ the use of fossil fuel burning equipment, including those with an attached enclosed garage. Carbon monoxide detectors should be placed on all habitable levels of a residence, including habitable portions of the basement and attic, and must be placed within 10 feet of each bedroom door. Please refer to general law or contact the Brookline Fire Department Fire Prevention Bureau for specific installment requirements. Do not wait for the sale or transfer of your home to protect your family with these life-saving detectors. I think that was important enough to spend probably about 4 minutes discussing. So I hope that's helpful. A reminder of the Goldstein family and what they meant for our community, as well as the things we need to do to prevent future accidents or future tragedies like this. So anyone else?
Yep.
Paul.
Thank you, Bernard. And thank you for those words. And it was a incredible tragedy.
Yeah.
The loss of that family. And, you know, we're planning on doing some vacationing in February with the children, and we'll be going to New Hampshire, and we've actually purchased, you can buy portable carbon monoxide detectors that you can take with you for traveling. And we have those devices now. So thank you. I did want to mention that there will be a free skating event on January 11th, hosted by the Friends of Lars Anderson Park and the Brookline Green Space Alliance. This will be on January 11th. It's entitled Under the Stars at Lars. So you can skate Saturday, January 11th from 5:30 to 9:30. It's free skating, rentals, and there'll be some demonstrations and skating there with some really incredible figure skaters that they put on a performance last year, which was quite amazing. And I think, Bernard, you attended that as well last year. So
I wasn't skating.
you weren't skating, but you were certainly there saying hello to folks.
That would be dangerous.
But it is it was a fun night last year. A lot of people came. The skating is beautiful under the stars. So in our wonderful open air skating rink at Lars, I think that's actually on our agenda tonight.
Yep.
As well. Yeah. So anyway, that's an event on Saturday, January 11th from 5:30 to 9:30.
Great, thank you. Any other updates? John?
Just a couple of notes. I thank the chair for his remarks about some local folks who suffered tragedy over the holiday period. I want to just mention that because I was reminded of this on my way to this meeting as I was listening on the radio to the observances in honor of Jimmy Carter in Washington. And I won't go, into great length about it, but I think that people have come to recognize with the various tributes that are being paid to former President Carter, that he was an extraordinary, extraordinary human being who set an example that few of us can hope to emulate. He wasn't perfect. And the words that sort of stood out for me as I was listening to the House Speaker and then Vice President Harris pay their tributes to Jimmy Carter was that he believed and practiced that we are all made in the image of God, and we are all equal. And that is just one of the fundamentals of what he stood for in an outstanding way in his example as a president. So just wanted to take note of that. I also want to say that, correct me if I'm wrong, we're not going to meet next Tuesday, right? So I wanted to highlight a meeting that's going to happen.
You are meeting next Tuesday. I'm sorry.
Oh, we are meeting next Tuesday.
You're off on MLK Day week.
Well, then I take that back. I'll save the announcement about the other event until next week.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or? Okay, let's open it up for public comment. Tiffany, read the rules and let's begin.
Thank you for joining us for public comment. This is an opportunity for us to hear your perspective on the issues in Brookline that matter to you. Each person speaking tonight is limited to 3 minutes. You don't need to use the entire time, but you may if you like. Once 15 minutes has been met, there's an opportunity at the conclusion of the Select Board's business for additional comments. Members of the public sometimes raise questions during public comment. We may be able to provide a quick answer to a question, but are more likely to work with staff to get a more thorough answer and respond over email. We'll let you know when you have 30 seconds remaining and when your time is up. Please conclude your remarks at that time. If you have more to say, you are welcome to send an email to board members expressing your thoughts in greater detail. Any person wishing to speak must begin their comment by identifying themselves with their name and either their Brookline precinct number or street address. The first person who signed up in advance to speak tonight was Abby Swain. Abby, I'm promoting you now. Abby, you can start your video if you're comfortable and begin your 3 minutes.
All right, I'm on. Thank you for hearing me. I am compelled by duty to offer a public comment on the candidacy of Robert Schoen. I'm not even sure if I'm saying his name right, for a seat on the planning board. I did submit written comments, so you have everything in detail should I begin to exceed my 3-minute limit. Not all board members may be aware of a case that Mr. Schoen brought before the Zoning Board of Appeals a few years ago. He appealed a building permit that had been issued to his next door neighbor for reasonable accommodation under ADA and our bylaws for a relaxation and setback requirements to construct an accessible entrance and garage. And that was to allow safe ingress, egress by the disabled child living there who uses a motorized wheelchair. So that child, her wheelchair and the vehicle that must convey her to many appointments is a sizable vehicle, and therefore the neighbors requested a fairly sizable addition to their house. I attended, the only reason I know about this is I attended the ZBA hearing on February 2nd, 2023, where this was heard and submitted a written comment in view of the perspective I have as the parent of a wheelchair user. And it's my understanding that the situation hasn't yet been resolved. There have been I've heard litigious disagreements between Mr. Schoen and his neighbor regarding building, zoning, and preservation issues. I don't have firsthand knowledge of those exchanges, and therefore I'm not going to touch those. But it seems from my perusal of the materials submitted to the ZBA and other public materials that Mr. Schoen may have a rather a tin ear for reasonable accommodation issues and rights and accessibility practices. And since accessibility law and policy is applied in cases that come before the planning board, and it's
You have 30
integral to
seconds.
its duties, and is part of the vision of the town to be inclusive, I think that's very important. There are a couple things in Mr. Schoen's application also that sort of jumped out at me that he may not be an ideal candidate. He stated that he was not afraid to take contrarian positions, and over compared his experience in financial portfolio management to managing a portfolio of
That
neighborhoods,
concludes
which
your time.
is unified as one might desire for that post. Thank you for your attention, and you can read my comment.
Thank you, Abby. The next speaker is Dawn.
Tiffany, I'm sorry. I know it's not our practice to respond to public comment, but there's more to the issue between Mr. Schoen and his neighbor than meets the eye, and I would urge anyone who's listened to the comments to reserve judgment. Thank you.
The next speaker is Dawn Oates. Dawn, I'm promoting you now. Dawn, you can start your video if you're comfortable. State your name and precinct number or address for the record.
It's not, okay, sorry, my video button was locked. Here we go. My name's Dawn Oates. I'm in precinct 1. I'm the neighbor of Rob Schoen and an abutter.
And you can begin your 3 minutes.
Thanks. Thanks for allowing me to address my concerns regarding Rob's candidacy for the planning board. The role of a planning board member requires a commitment to enforcing established processes and ensuring fair, informed decision-making. And Rob's record shows a repeated failure to follow these processes himself, raising serious concerns about his ability to enforce them for others. In June of 2012, Rob and his wife purchased their home, and weeks later, they gutted the entire home down to the studs until nearly all historic fabric was gone. The extensive renovations amounted to a full demolition of a historic home built in 1900 and listed on the National Register of Historic Places. This was done without adherence to any zoning, preservation, or demolition bylaws and without any public process. On August 29, 2012, the Preservation Commission staff sent a letter to Mike Yanovich, then Deputy Building Commissioner, pointing out that the home was permitted for renovation, not demolition. The letter highlighted that all historic windows had been removed in violation of the permit. All historic features, including timbers and windows, were to be replaced by the owners exactly as they were before. But despite this order, Rob Schoen and his wife Kathleen did not comply, and there is no record explaining why these violations went unenforced. Meanwhile, Rob has sued the town of Brookline, as you've heard, the Zoning Board of Appeals, and my family, despite the unanimous decision of the ZBA to uphold the permit granted for our accessible addition as a reasonable accommodation under ADA federal disability rights laws. He undermined the town council, the building commissioner, and the ZBA because he felt that instead of a timely and less burdensome reasonable accommodation process mandated by ADA, we should have followed the protracted 40A process. This is despite his own record of bypassing these same processes when demolishing and rebuilding his own home. This is a hypocrisy that demonstrates an inability to enforce policies fairly or make decisions objectively. When my family requested a handicap accessible parking spot, which the town designated in front of his home at 10 Beach Road, he opposed its placement due to personal preference, even enlisting Select Board member Mike Sandman to support his objection. Despite previously rallying neighbors, including Mike Sandman, to oppose my garage permit on the grounds of safety concerns near our corner lot, he advocated moving the accessible spot into a decades-old no parking zone at the same busy corner, potentially creating hazards to people and property while undermining his own safety standards. Turn study ordered by the Town Transportation Committee as a contingency for the spot on the corner found that fire trucks and school buses would need to drive not only on the sidewalks and accessible ramps, but also on the grass of the federally protected Longwood Mall historic site, which Rob is also tasked
30
with
seconds.
head of the Friends of the Longwood Mall. Despite this, the spot was installed there in December, a year after my request. Should have been a simple request. Rob's record demonstrates not only a disregard for legal processes, but a pattern of obstructing accessibility and reasonable accommodations for people with disabilities. These actions are not compatible with the responsibilities of a planning board member who must act with fairness, consistency, integrity, and inclusivity. Thanks for your time and consideration.
Thank you. The next speaker who signed up in advance was Scott Ryan. Scott, I'm promoting you now. Scott, you should be able to start your video if you're comfortable. State your name and precinct or address for the record and begin your 3 minutes.
Hi, thank you for the time. My name is Scott Ryan. I live at 190 Dudley Street, right at the Dudley and Lee roundabout. I appreciate the time. I am raising a concern about disturbing and dangerous traffic behavior at the Dudley Lee roundabout. I've lived at this location for about 9 years now, and I've noticed over the past few years very dangerous driving behaviors, including excessive speed, both on the Dudley side and on the Lee side. To and from Route 9. It's really used as almost a slingshot for people to come around, from Lee Street around the roundabout towards Route 9. The speed limit used to be 35 miles an hour. It's gone down to 25, both on the Dudley and the Lee side. And that unfortunately has not changed any driving behavior. It is extremely dangerous. There have been multiple accidents which have been reported over the last few years. One recent accident took out I believe a telephone pole. There were 2 accidents within the past few years right at the stone wall and pillars in front of our driveway. One took out the entire stone pillar that had to be rebuilt. And then just last month, there was a car that leapt over my neighbor's a stone wall, and half of the car was on top of the stone wall. As you probably know, this is a very busy walkway and sidewalk going down to the reservoir. Families use it, bringing their kids to school, and it doesn't seem to matter what the season is, whether it's icy or not. There are accidents there year round, and it's very dangerous. I have two young girls that live here, and it is we don't let them go down to the end of the driveway alone because of the number of accidents. In fact, even when I bring down the garbage, I get a little nervous. So it's primarily a speed issue. You know, I'm an orthopedic trauma surgeon in Boston, and I take care of patients who are injured in accidents like these. The drivers tend to be fine, but you know, if any of these cars had hit people, it would most certainly be lethal. And that's my my biggest concern and fear. The only thing that has helped has been constant police presence, which I've reached out to them, and they've been phenomenal with their response. But the behavior is very aggressive and dangerous, so we even get beeped at just
30
from the
seconds.
roundabout turning into the driveway. So I ask that we consider doing an investigation into some other practices. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. The next speaker is Donnell O'Neill. Donnell, I'm promoting you now. Donnell, you should be able to start your video. If you're comfortable, state your name and precinct number for the record.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Happy New Year, first and foremost. My name is Donnell O'Neill, Senior, town meeting member from Precinct 4. I'm also in the advisory committee, tax member as well. I'll be brief. What I love about our town is that each year, what I've witnessed for over 45 years is each year we strive to be a better town, better community. I was brought up at the historical 12th Baptist Church in Roxbury. And what I learned there was that the people in that church, that building, actually made the church. And I feel that way about our town, our community. Our community makes Brookline, the people in our town, make it our town. And that being said, each year, by the grace of God, we're doing, and I've witnessed, I see this, we're doing our best to be better neighbors, just better community members, just better in general, better policymakers, trying to make everything a little more equitable throughout the whole town. We've been able to do this Zoom, allowing for a broader participation amongst the community members in this town. I'm proud of our town. I love being a member of this community here. And I just ask that we continue to, especially this year, knock down the barriers that have been in our way for many, many years. Let's continue to bring everyone to the table and talk. I love being a town, and you know, I'm saying this on my own behalf. I'm not too excited about this charter thing coming up. I'm not excited about it. And
30 seconds.
thank you. You know, we've been a community, a town for many years, and it's allowed for folks like me and others to be at that table and speak up, to help knock down them barriers. Thank you for giving me this time. Have a good year, everyone. Look forward to knock down those barriers. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Regina Frawley.
Good evening. Healthy New Year to all. Regina Frawley from South Brookline, Precinct 16, and a town meeting member. Struggled over this, how to present this. Many years ago, very few people who know this, that the public comment period was created by an action of a select board person, Gil Hoy. It was his idea to start it, and it started right here at the select board. It was such a good idea that it began to spread to all your boards, and I think most people really appreciate that you have that policy throughout the town. But there is a distinct difference between public comment and public hearing. And recently, I think it was the 17th of December, they were treated as the same. The public hearing has always been, under every board I've ever participated in or observed, they have always allowed, unless there was a line going around the corner, they always allowed a fair amount of time for people to say what they needed to say. And it was definitely not the same as a public comment period. So I hope, this is the first time I saw them conjoined as the same policy, and I hope that the select board will go back to your predecessors, in very recent predecessors, who allowed the public hearing component, as long as there aren't a lot of people, to have extra time to be able to say what they need to say. The whole idea of calling it a public hearing is that you get to hear, and people don't always get to say what they need to say in 3 minutes. So that is my comment tonight, and I hope that you will take it very seriously. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes our time for public comment at the beginning of the meeting. If there are others who wish to speak, please hold your comments till the end of the meeting.
Yeah, okay.
Well, there are other hands raised as well,
Oh,
so
really?
yes,
Okay,
How many more people are?
at least one. So 2 in total.
well, okay, there's just 2 people. Why don't we let them speak? You have to speak up
You
here.
may go ahead and approach the podium, yes. Please state your name and precinct number for the record.
This is a deviation from our practice, which is pretty dangerous. But, I think we can accommodate you this time.
Go ahead.
I didn't hear you, Bernie.
Go ahead.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Ruth Ann Snyder, and I've come this evening, I think, to make a deal with you. I want to trade something. I want a public promise from you that you'll do something. And so here's the dilemma. I hired an arborist, a small company, to prune a tree on my land. And we negotiated a price. And then I came out to see the work, and the tree was only half pruned. And they said to me in great detail that they couldn't prune the rest of it because it went through town electrical wires and telephone wires and internet wires, and they're not allowed to touch it. But I shouldn't worry because down the street, they're doing the next block, and they'll be coming to my house very shortly. And so I said, well, we negotiated the whole deal. I'll pay you for half the tree because you've done half the tree. And when the town comes down the street and finishes it, I'll pay you for that half. But I don't want to be left. I actually said to them, I have more faith in you to finish the job than I do the town. And I said that to them, and I turned out to be right because the town never came back and did my block. So I live on the corner of Perry and Brook Streets, and there may be 4 blocks. They did block 4 and 3. They never came back to do 2 and 1. So I've come this evening because the man came back to me today and said, I've come back to finish the job. And I said, I don't give you permission to do it. You told me that it was too dangerous and you didn't have permission to do it. So what's different? Why should I let you do it? He gave me some reasons and I said, no, I'm sorry. And he said, well, what are we going to do? And I said, I don't really know, but I'm going to go ask some people who might. And so I've come this evening to tell you that I'm willing to pay him for the rest of his job that's undone. If
Okay. We get this. This is really why we shouldn't deviate from our
There's a
practice.
question.
Having done so, you have to let her.
Right, I know.
Let her finish.
Say it again, Bernard. I don't hear.
No, continue,
Continue.
but I think, yeah, well, continue and then I'll say what. No, continue.
I'll finish up and you
Yeah.
can deal with it. So it's a small company. He obviously came back. He wants to be paid and I want to pay him. But I don't want to be left next fall or whatever. I want a guarantee from you guys that you will send your Department of Public Works or your tree department down to my neighborhood to finish the job before spring, which is March 21st. Do you think you can do it? And I want to pay him. I want this to be done.
You have 30 seconds.
Fair request, and it's in your hands to do it.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. The next speaker is Jocelyn Murphy. Jocelyn, I'm promoting you now. If you could state your name and precinct number for the record.
Thanks so much for taking my very brief comments. Good evening, Jocelyn Murphy, town meeting member in precinct 16. Last Friday, some of you witnessed the spectacular release of 37 geese and ducks that were impacted by the December oil release into the Muddy River. If you were unable to witness the event, it is truly worth watching one of the videos produced by the news media or by the New England Wildlife Center. The agency rescued and rehabilitated the birds that had been oiled. The event marked an extraordinary collaboration between the state and local agencies, both public and private, that responded to this local environmental disaster. However, in the aftermath of the incident, it appeared that there is no organized plan in place to respond to emergencies in Brookline involving domestic pets and wildlife. It is my understanding that the Office of Emergency Management is the appropriate organization to work with relevant staff to identify policies, equipment, and training that may be needed to address such a response. Please consider recommending the inclusion of an emergency response plan for domestic pets and wildlife in the emergency response strategic plan that you will be discussing this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes public comment at the beginning of the meeting.
I apologize for allowing speakers to go over the 15-minute period. And with respect to Ruth Ann Snyder's comments, I would sort of urge her to send those comments to the select board or individual members or the town administrator. It's a type of issue that is better and more effectively addressed in that way. But I did what I did, and
I'll just say we've already responded to her.
You did the right thing. Let's keep going.
okay. That's the end of that, and moving right along. So I move approval of first of all, item 3A, which is the minutes for December 17, 2024. Any edits? I added one little edit to clarify part of the minutes. Any others from the select board? No?
Nope.
Okay, I move approval. All in favor of the minutes for December 17, 2024, please indicate by saying aye. John Van Scoyac.
Aye.
Michael Sandman.
Aye.
Paul Warren.
Aye.
David Perlman.
Aye.
And chair votes aye. Next, I'd like to move items 3B to 3M in omnibus fashion, unless someone wants to take an item out and discuss it at a later meeting or vote it separately. Select board members can also comment on a particular miscellaneous item if they would like. I'd like to comment on items 3H and 3I, which relate to donations from the Korean Church to the fire and police departments. We really appreciate these donations. And the donation to the police department is for community policing projects. And I just want to say, as I often do, that we have an excellent police department, partly because of its commitment to community policing. They don't just chase robbers, as some people think they should, but they integrate with the community to provide services and to be available when people feel threatened by criminal activity or want to report activities that may threaten the community. Community policing is especially important for young adults whose brains may not have fully matured, as mine wasn't when I was young, and who may engage in inappropriate activities that, if caught early, can be handled in a manner that will not have long-term consequences. Our police can make these determinations because of ongoing work in the community during good times, so that when something happens and it's a bad time for the individual, police department can more appropriately respond. So I'm using the donation from the Korean church to make that observation, and also to say we really appreciate the Korean church's involvement in the community and their support for many activities here in Brookline. With that, unless there are other comments or items you want taken out, I move that we approve items 3H to 3M. I'm sorry, 3B to 3M. So all in favor, please indicate by saying aye. John Van Scoyac.
Aye.
Michael Sandman.
Aye.
Paul Warren.
Aye.
David Perlman.
Aye.
And Chair votes aye. Okay, and by the way, that includes item 3B, which is our meeting schedule for 2025. There have been some changes, so if people want to see the meeting schedule, just go online to our webpage and
Yes.
observe it. Okay. Good.
And the final version is in the packet as well, so folks
Oh,
can see
okay,
it
the
there.
final
Mhm,
version made
yes.
it? Okay, that's great. Okay, let's go to calendar items, boards and commissions interviews. We're interviewing candidates for the Zoning Board of Appeals, Stephen Brooks, and the Planning Board, Robert Schoen. Is Mr. Brooks here in the audience? Yes, please come to the podium. So introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about yourself and why you want to be a member of the Zoning Board of Appeals and your
My name is
qualifications
Stephen Brooks.
for that.
I live at 10 Cary Road. I'm an attorney. I'm just started my 31st year of practice, primarily in real estate. Most of my practice is real estate closings, bank work, sales, purchases, 95% residential matters. I don't actually do any zoning work. My office is in Dedham. I served the town previously on the ninth school committee, selection committee. And once that wound down, that was the extent of what I did. Prior to that, I was a coach for my kids in baseball and soccer. So at this point, I have a little time. I had heard that there was an opening, was asked to submit my application, which I did. But I would suggest that if someone that knows how to apply the facts to the law and would be a good candidate for the position, I'm available to do it. I have some pretty considerable experience in the legal world. Started out as a litigator full-time and then moved over to the transactional work that I do now. But I think I'm pretty good at analyzing situations and interpreting the law.
Great. Mike,
Just what was the nature of the work the litigation that you did? Civil, criminal?
So my practice was probably 95% criminal. Before I did a lot of jury trials. Then I decided to have children, and that is not necessarily a complimentary practice when you want to raise your kids. So I moved into the transactional work.
Did you work in public defender's office or were you independent?
Yeah, independent, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
David.
You address in your application how there'll be challenges regarding the Chapter 40A amendments and accessory dwelling units. And I'm wondering what you mean by sort of being sensitive to those changes.
Well, I think that there's going to be some new challenges based on that change in that we should be ready to help with those and help the town with those. You know, there might be some people that are looking to test the limits of that provision. So I think that we should be in a position to discuss that depending on how much comes through the pipeline.
John?
Thank you very much for applying. Have you had a chance to observe the zoning board of appeals in action and take note of that they currently at least meet on Thursday nights? And I'm assuming you have no issue with that.
No, I don't have any scheduling issues.
Good.
Okay, any other questions or?
I wonder if we could just explore the question that David asked about the challenges that you that you see and that some people may try to stretch the limits. And I guess I would say that one of the jobs of the zoning board is that there are people trying to stretch probably every zoning limit that we have. Uh, and, and that sometimes it's appropriate to let them stretch that limit and sometimes it's not. Any sense of how you apply, what, have you thought through any criteria that you would use to decide when it's appropriate to go beyond to grant a variance?
No, I haven't thought about that, frankly. I just know that it's something that we're gonna have on our laps fairly soon, so
Mhm.
I intend to familiarize myself quite well with it and, take each case as it comes.
Okay.
Yeah. You mentioned affordable housing, I believe, in your application as an important issue. You have any thoughts or new ideas or approaches you take on the ZBA that are related to affordable housing?
Well, I don't know about the affordable housing part. It's something that's on all of our laps in
Yeah.
every community. So I think that the recent amendment to chapter 40A is intended to address that. And that might be part of what we're gonna see in the next few years.
Right. Nothing beyond ADUs, though? Nothing beyond?
Nothing
ADUs?
specific, no.
Okay. Any other questions or? Okay, thank you. We'll be making our decisions on appointments to the ZBA at a later meeting. So
Thank you.
appreciate your coming in and making application.
Of
Thank
course.
you. Okay. Okay, next is Planning Board, Mr. Robert Shern. Shorn, sorry.
Hi, thank you. Rob Schoen, town member,
Will you move the mic up a little?
sorry,
Will you move the mic up to you?
Oh,
a
yeah.
little? Thank you.
town meeting member precinct 1. Here to discuss application for the planning board. Just let me address real quick the comments that were made earlier. I'm not going to get into tit for tat with that. Other than to say that I thought the comments were false, misleading, and unfair. And I'm happy to answer any questions about those if you have any during the questions. My prepared remarks are that I have lived in Brookline for 17 years with my wife. I have 2 kids at the Lawrence School. I'm on the executive committee of the Brookline Green Space Alliance. I'm leader of the Friends of Longwood Mall. I have worked in the investment industry for about 35 years, 27 of them at Putnam Investments, where I was a member of the operating committee. I managed the team, the asset allocation team that was responsible for the multi-asset and retirement portfolios at Putnam. I say with humility that I want to acknowledge that while I've taken an interest in recent years in urban planning and zoning, I'm by no means an expert. I have no expertise in those areas, architecture, design, urban planning, zoning. And, I plan to study that. I have been studying that. But I think that there is a lot of expertise already on the planning board in those areas. And the reason why I want to apply for the planning board is because I think I can bring some diversity to the board, diversity of skills and diversity of perspective. So, I've been thinking about, my experience in portfolio management. And I see analogies to urban planning and portfolio management. I think that it's, while there's a lot of, it's exciting and there's a lot of upside to planning for long-term growth, it's also a risky venture. And I think what I'd like to bring to the board is this perspective of risk management, thinking about how do all the decisions that get made in urban planning, how do they impact all aspects of the build, like safety, transportation, residential, green space, commercial, all those aspects are impacted by these decisions. And I kind of want to take that kind of perspective, that risk management perspective, and bring that to the planning board. So that's kind of a big reason why I thought that my experience could be relevant and help the board make good decisions in the future. So with that, I just say in conclusion that I'm really excited about the opportunity to kind of help, develop Brookline's growth. And I'm just excited about that kind of, having the potential to have that opportunity. It's, I'm very invested in Brookline's future, and I really I see the planning board as a place where the implementation of the comprehensive plan is going to be a really important place to be over the next 5 years, and I'd like to be a part of it.
Okay, thank you. So I guess I'd like to start off with a question related to the comments that were made earlier. I know there are two sides to every story. But, the issue of your sensitivity to accessibility issues is very important to me. And I think to most people in this community who have either children or other relatives or friends for who accessibility is a really important issue. So address, your sensitivity to and your thoughts about how on the planning board you should think about issues of accessibility and general issues of how we make sure that we're not excluding people with handicaps from.
Yeah, I'm absolutely very supportive of making sure that Brookline is accessible in all ways to disabled people. And I think it's just a really important issue. I think what, my particular experience highlighted is that there wasn't a well-defined process for doing something like what my neighbor wanted to do. And that's kind of, the reason why we went to court over this is because there wasn't a process in place, and that, in our opinion, the town proceeded illegally. And, frankly, I think the courts agreed with us. So I think that, Brookline should make more robust regulations about how people can go about getting special permits and variances in this case, and make sure that it's an open process, a transparent process where everyone in the neighborhood can participate and get their view, and that, these things aren't done in secret behind closed doors, as could be the case in the way things were set up before. So, but yeah, I'm very supportive of this. In my particular case, we've never been opposed to getting a garage for our neighbor. It's just the size of the garage and the fact that it was going right up against our property line is what we had an objection to. And our neighbors were just unwilling to work with us to compromise on that whatsoever. So, so our opposition to this particular garage has no reflection whatsoever on our feelings about accessibility and granting of special permits for people that need it.
Okay, Paul.
Yep. Thanks, Rob. And thanks for coming forward. First, you should know, in full disclosure, I know Rob. I'm a priest. He lives a couple of streets over. I've known him for years. I have a significant high regard for him. He's a person of high moral values. And I'm very familiar with the situation, which was a dispute with a neighbor. Let's categorize what that is. It's a dispute with a neighbor. I in no way, shape, or form believe that Rob has any ill intent towards those that have disabilities or need accommodations. In fact, I think the experience probably makes Rob even more qualified to be able to serve on the planning board, because he can understand what ancillary impacts are as you're considering building proposals. But if you could speak a little bit about that, because you did mention that you're not a zoning guy. You're not an architect. I think there's 3 architects or maybe 4 on the planning board already. Help us understand how you would approach adding value when there's a specific proposal in front of the board. So I know that your particular case didn't go through the planning board. It was actually circumvented. But if a similar type of proposal or a building proposal is going to be, you're going to be hearing these proposals, how would you approach it, and your thought process about how to help improve the proposal versus just saying no?
Yeah, I think I want to, be open-minded to everything that comes before the planning board, work with the other planning board members to come to a consensus when, wherever possible. Look, I'm a big believer in listening to the public and making sure that all the input from the neighbors has been heard and considered. I think that's very important. I think that's been a big motivating force for the planning board in historically, and I want to continue that. Yeah, I just think that, I do have something of an analytical or quantitative bent, which I might be able to add something more kind of more of a quantitative analytical approach to issues, I would hope. But yeah, I think I have a long track record in my work experience of engaging in vigorous debate with my, but at the same time maintaining collegial relationships with my colleagues and leading, change going forward. And so I think that's what I think that same kind of, those skills are very applicable in the planning board.
Mike?
Thanks, Bernard. So you and I have corresponded, I think, by email, but this is the first time that we've actually
Yeah, I don't
seen each
think we
other.
have. Yeah,
Right.
that's me.
I appreciate your explanation of the circumstances with the Oates family. The question I have is, you mentioned risk, you have a risk management background, and I'm just looking at your professional experience and wondering about the period of time when you were an independent consultant, shown timing strategies. I was always told that you can't time the market, but I'll let that go. And ask you a little bit about what is risk management? How do you apply it in the case of an application for a project?
Well, I think, my experience in portfolio management is thinking about how any individual decision in the portfolio how it interacts with all the other things that are already in the portfolio. And so I think the same thing is applicable here. Like, I want to think about, like I said in my prepared remarks, that I want to think about how every decision is going to impact all the different areas. And I think, there's a lot of considerations that are really on the top of mind of people, things like, what is this project going to do to the schools? What's it going to do to traffic, and what's it going to do to green space, right? And so I want to think about all of those and weigh and make sure that all those risks are being considered when we're thinking about projects they're going forward. And I think another risk is, are we properly considering the input from the neighborhood and the people that are affected and impacted by any individual project?
Right. The planning board, have you sat in on some planning board meetings?
I've sat on a planning board and I've watched way too many recorded planning board meetings over the last month or so.
Okay.
So I've gone back about maybe 6 months and watched pretty much, a large number of the meetings.
And you've seen that a lot of the decisions that are made are really based on technical issues,
They are.
things like facade and
Yeah.
and shadow studies and so forth.
I understand that, and I honestly, I'm not going to have very, very strong opinions on a lot of the technical issues. I'll leave that to the architects on the team. But I do think, that with the comprehensive plan, being done, that there is going to be a big role for long-term strategic planning. And the planning, my understanding is that the planning board has a big role to play in that, in the implementation of that plan. And that's really where I think I'm going to be most helpful and most useful.
Okay, thank you.
John?
I'm sorry.
Thank you for applying for the planning board position. I just want to speak to an aspect of this that I'm not sure has been addressed quite enough from my perspective, and that is simply this question of whether one has to be an architect or one has to be a professional planner to be on the planning board. And if it's not obvious from the way I have posed that question, I don't think one does have to be one of those things. I think a planning board without some architects and some planners would not be a good thing, but we have that. And there is a role to play. I'm just going to express an opinion here, forgive me. There is a role to play for people who think in terms of their neighborhood, think in terms of the town's history, think in terms of green space, think in terms of what it means to try to match the context of the architectural context and the existing planning context of neighborhoods in what comes before the planning board. And I think in that regard, having people who have done some work at the neighborhood level on, a park in their neighborhood, have done some work in terms of getting involved with something like Green Space Alliance. That is a perspective we need on the planning board as well. So I just want people who might be listening tonight and thinking in terms of their own future willingness to take part in whether it's the planning board or some of these other boards and commissions that we have in the town. There's always a role to play for people who are just contributors to the life of their neighborhoods, and have had experience with the town and have had experience working with their neighbors on the kinds of issues that pop up at the neighborhood level. And that's going to guide me in my response to the candidates we have before us to be on the planning board.
David.
You referenced strategic planning in your answer to Mike Salmon's question. And I'm wondering, do you have your own personal viewpoint about strategic planning and what your role would be on the planning board? Or is it more implementing the findings of the comprehensive planning committee?
I think it's going to be very important to implement the findings of the comprehensive planning. I'd like to get more involved in that process going forward, especially as I have more time available. But yeah, I mean, I think the obligation of the planning board is to implement the plan as that comes out of the steering committee.
Okay.
Could I say one more
Sure.
thing? And this just, I was thinking about this. I know we have some members of the Disability Commission here. I mean, this is kind of emotional, but I don't even think Dawn Oates knows this, but I have a cousin who has had juvenile rheumatoid arthritis. When I was 12 years old, she's 2 years younger, and she's still she's in her 50s now, and she struggled her whole life in wheelchairs. I just saw her over Thanksgiving. She's had a tough life, so I'm really hurt by the accusations that I'm some kind of disability bigot. It's just not true. And I just want to say that on the record.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay, we will be, before you go, we will be making our decision at a later meeting. Thank you for applying. Okay, boards and commissions annual reports. Excuse me. Next, we have a presentation by the chair of the Brookline Commission on Disability, James Lee, of the commission's annual report to the select board.
Okay. I'm gonna find out right now.
Yeah, there's more than one.
Okay. Thank you.
It says it's connected. Okay. Is the first slide up there?
It is.
And where's the pad? This is it here. Okay, terrific. Okay, hello to the select board. Thank you for having us in here to present our work over the past year. Just by way of introduction, my name is Jim Lee. I'm the current chair of the Brookline Commission on Disability. And with me tonight is Henry Winkleman, also a member of the Brookline Commission on Disability. I know that you went a little bit over on public comment, so I know we're a bit behind on the schedule, but I have to say that the work that the commission does is important. So over the next 3.5 hours, I plan to, I'm only joking. But I would like to start with just a little bit of history. I'm sorry, did that go?
Read it one time.
Okay, there we go.
There you go.
Next.
Oh, okay. Can we go back one slide? My apologies. Okay. So, just a little bit of history. In 1983, Massachusetts passed MGL 40. This gave cities and towns the opportunity to create disability commissions. Brookline was one of the first. In 1986, they created the Commission on Disability by town meeting. And then in 2017, again by town meeting vote, they reaffirmed their commitment to the Brookline Commission on Disability, saying that the commission is part of the town and will continue on with its important work. Like every commission or board or committee, we have rotating members. Our current members are Sarah Lynn Allaire, Joan Mahone, Lynn Meachek, Elaine Ober, Rob Heist, and the aforementioned Henry Winkleman. Our two newest members are Franklin Panetta Lopez, and our new select board liaison is Mr. Mike Sandman. Two very important but non-voting members are Sarah Kaplan, the ADA coordinator here in Brookline, and Nancy Moore is our transportation board liaison. Now, all of our members either have a disability or have a family member with a disability or are somehow closely associated with the disability community. And with that, a few people have mentioned what is a disability. So disabilities are complex, and there's obvious disabilities and there's, not that obvious disabilities. As an example, if you see somebody with a white cane, you can assume that they're visually impaired or blind. You see somebody with a listening device, then you can assume that they're hard of hearing or deaf. You see a wheelchair user, you know that they have a physical disability. But there are not so obvious or unseen disabilities, such as a traumatic brain injury, or perhaps autism or learning disabilities like ADHD. So, what does the commission do for people with disabilities, their families, and the town as a whole? We try to remove architectural and technological barriers. If necessary, we advocate or will even fund the new technology to remove those barriers. We also provide families with informational resources who are dealing with disabilities so that they can find the resources that they need. One of the big things that we have dealt with over the past year has been the transition plan here in Brookline. This is a self-evaluation by various Brookline departments. And this is not by any means a gotcha kind of situation, but we review with them their ADA compliance. It's an open communication between the ADA coordinator, the various department, and the Brookline Commission on Disability. And what we try to do is improve the physical access, the communication access, and the program access. Now, one of the big things that most Commission on Disabilities are associated with are variances. And just briefly, I want to describe what a variance is because we actually had a meeting yesterday and somebody asked me. So for anybody listening who doesn't know what a variance is a request that goes to the Massachusetts Architectural Access Board to alter or not implement at all a specific ADA code compliance. In Massachusetts, we use what's called 521 CMR. That is essentially our ADA compliance code. So somebody will submit a variance to alter that in some way. And when they do, that variance comes to us. We will review it, and then we will provide feedback to the Massachusetts Architectural Access Board. The two biggest reasons that people try to alter a code compliant issue is financial restraints. In other words, it's just a lot of money for the cost of the overall project, or physical. Okay, in other words, there's just no room for it. Okay, so that'll come to us, we will review it, and then we will provide information back to the Architectural Access Board. Sometimes we have no complaints about it. Sometimes we offer alternatives. Some of the big ones that we have been involved with was the Coolidge Corner Theater Ashby Hall at 400 Heath Street, and the Pierce School. But we do go beyond variances. We do more than variances. When the town needed new listening devices for town meeting, we worked with the ADA coordinator to review specifications, get quotes, and ultimately we funded the purchase of those listening devices. We also worked with the Brookline Public Library to introduce an American Sign Language introductory course provided by Deaf Inc., one of the leading organizations for American Sign Language. That allowed 25 Brookline residents to take that introductory course for free. And when the Brookline Farmers Market was receiving requests from seniors and people with disabilities for an accessible porta potty, the Brookline Commission on Disability funded that as well. Not surprisingly, we've gotten many thanks for the porta potty. We've also worked with the Brookline High School Scholarship Committee. We have created a program to provide 2 scholarships annually for graduating seniors with disabilities. This allows them to advance their education and start their careers. But we also like to think of ourselves as a resource for the town. When the United Parish Church wanted outreach to its people, to people with disabilities, they came to us. We gave them ideas to improve the physical access to the building, improve communication, and enhance approachability to people with disabilities. Each time that an ad hoc committee comes up in the town of Brookline, they also turn to us. Typically, they want one of our members to be on their committees. We've had members on the Davis Path Footbridge Committee, the Washington Street Design Review Committee, and the Open Spaces Committee. We also have permanent liaisons to the Pedestrian Advisory Committee, as well as the Age Friendly Cities Committee. And when departments here in Brookline need additional money that's not available and they need grant money, they typically turn to us to support. And we provide that support. We provide that support through letters of support to various organizations. We've sent multiple letters to the Federal Highway Department, and we have sent letters to the Massachusetts Office on Disability. Now, to be quite honest, sometimes we win some, sometimes we lose some. We have received money in the past to put in an accessible pedestrian signal on Harvard Street. And this past year, we received funds to mitigate 30,000 pages of archived Brookline documents, making those documents screen reader accessible. A few commission-specific accomplishments. We wrote our first new member orientation document this year. This goes through the history of the disability movement, the history of the commission itself, as well as rules, regulations, and bylaws of the commission, and also the roles and responsibility. We have reviewed and provided feedback to new town policies, as well as select board policies. What's that? Did it come up? Oh, I'm sorry. Looking forward, we're working with the Pedestrian Advisory Committee, as well as the Department of Public Works, to create a sidewalk prioritization policy. We're also planning on creating an accessible parking map. This will show all of the accessible parking spots here in Brookline, and we plan on evaluating those spots as well. If you have an accessible parking spot that's next to a tree, next to a post, next to a bike rack, an accessible spot quickly becomes inaccessible. And then also, on a much bigger level, Basically, we're trying to make Brookline a more accessible community. This is on the micro level as well as the macro level. Micro level, just moving down the street or getting into a restaurant. On the macro level, enjoying our open spaces, attending town events, or participating in town governance. And then also, we hope to finally conclude the transition plan with each department here in Brookline. And finally, I'll say this here, we're very proud of what we've accomplished in 24. We're looking forward to 25. And with that, gentlemen, I will take any questions that you might have.
Paul.
Yep. Jim, thank you. I love the slides. Well, very well done.
Thank you.
And thank you for your service to our community. I wanted to ask about metrics. When you're getting into sidewalk accessibility, number of ramps, number of accessible parking spaces. I'm just curious, what you have metrics that you use that as a commission to track and see how we're making on progress?
The commission works with the Department of Public Works. The Department of Public Works actually does have metrics on every sidewalk. And the so the sidewalks is going to be based on levelness, is there tree roots, things of that nature. And there are metrics, and there's categories, there's fair, good, poor, excellent within those categories. And it's based on the levelness of it, how much concrete is broken, and so on. As far as accessible parking spots go, there are categories. There's for every 25 spots, you're supposed to have one spot. And then at 200, it drops down to 3%, at 400, 2%. So there's percentages of every parking space that says how many accessible spots you're supposed to have.
And do we, I guess my point is, periodically, are you reviewing the metrics with the DPW just to see, are we?
With the DPW, yes, we have
Okay.
been. We have been. And as far as the parking spots go, we're going to be reviewing those. We do have there is a current map of accessible spots.
Yep.
And we're going to be updating that this
Okay,
year.
great. Thank you.
David?
You mentioned various ad hoc committees that your
Yes.
commission serves on, including Open Space Committee. Which ad hoc committees or other committees in town do you feel that you're not where you do not currently have a presence and you'd like one?
I would say probably the planning board. I would say the planning board. And this has been something that I've looked into, and maybe I should be a little bit more aggressive on it. Honestly, it bothers me to a certain degree that a constructor in Brookline would be requesting a variance. And I have no problem with them requesting a variance. I completely understand some of those barriers that they face. However, it's frustrating that it starts here, goes all the way to the Massachusetts Architectural Board, then comes back to the Commission on Disability, who goes back to the Massachusetts Architectural Board, who goes back to the building officials to grant that variance. I feel like if we were involved in that process from the beginning and we knew that they were upcoming, perhaps there'd be other ways around that.
Mike?
I thank you, Brian. Thank you, Jim. I just want to say that my experience as a liaison from the select board has been an education for me. And I think that this is a remarkably diligent, thoughtful, and well-informed group, informed about the rules, informed about the nature of various disabilities. They do a wonderful job. And this presentation is an example of how they can put it all together.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'd like to second that. And I hope people realize that, disability or the Disability Commission doesn't just help people with disabilities or current disabilities. Over the last few months, I've been walking around with a cane. So in a certain sense, I was disabled and it really opened my eyes to some of the inaccessibilities around town. But more importantly, I remember last year at the high school graduation, there was a student who was severely disabled in a wheelchair, but her mind was still intact. I mean, not intact, her mind was incredible. And she was very good at math, at complex abstract mathematical processes, and is now at UMass Boston studying math, which is way over my head. But that's an example of how when we don't provide support and accessibility to people with disabilities, we lose so much that could be critically important for everyone's benefit. So I guess I'd like to also echo again Mike's comment about both the importance of Disability Commission, but also the good work that you're doing. So,
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
any
And
other-
everybody, everybody on the commission works very hard. I have to say, ever since I've been a member, it has been really great to work with them because everybody has an interest and everybody works very hard. We really do. And we have great meetings. And again, we're involved with various committees and we're always bringing information back. It's been fantastic.
Okay, thank you for the report. And
Okay, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Jim.
next, we have scheduled a marijuana retail establishment license violation public hearing. We have received a request from Jeffrey Allen, the attorney for the cannabis store, to postpone for temporary postponement so he can address some issues that he hopes to resolve until January 28th. I think everyone has received a copy of that letter. And anything you want to add, Chaz, before we vote on whether to accept the postponement?
No, I would just say, we've had conversations with when they requested this, we had conversations. We said this would be the final extension and that we would see them on the 28th if the board agreed to move forward with the continuance of the hearing to then.
Okay.
You do have to vote on this just because their license is conditional on this hearing going forward. So
Right.
the vote would be to continue the hearing and extend the term of their license to the 28th.
Okay. Anyone have a objection to this, to doing that? Okay. So I move approval of the extension or the continuance of the hearing and the extension of their license until the hearing scheduled for January 28th of this year. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. John Van Scoyac.
Aye.
Michael Sandman.
Aye.
Paul Warren.
Aye.
David Perlman.
Aye.
And chair votes aye. Next, emergency management strategy review. So who do we have on Zoom to discuss this? I see Chief Sullivan,
And Cheryl Ann Snyder.
Carolyn Snyder. Okay.
So thank you, Mr. Chair, and appreciate the select board taking a look at our strategic plan. I first want to acknowledge and compliment the hard work that's done every day, but specifically on this strategic plan by Cheryl in her role as emergency management coordinator. As you know, the Office of Emergency Management didn't have a formal structure until just a few years ago as we segued into COVID. And Cheryl had previously been working at the health department, which was a great asset to us during the COVID years as the emergency preparedness coordinator for the health department. And it has transitioned into this role through the use of UASI grant originally. And then the value was obvious after the pandemic that we needed to bolster our emergency management function in town. So she has taken on a number of different projects over the course of the last few years to update all of our plans. And one of the major blocks that we are presenting tonight is the presentation of the strategic plan. I want to make a differentiation at this point because I know there was a public comment about the situation at the Muddy River, and we're happy to address that. But I would ask that
held off until after the presentation of the strategic plan, because it really it is more of a conversation about the operational plan, which is the comprehensive emergency management plan, which is currently under review and should come before you as a package later on this year. So with that, I want to just again just reiterate that this is a strategic plan. This is not an operational plan. So this is a path forward for emergency management over the course of the next 5 years. It is based on the national strategy for emergency management planning for municipalities, counties, and it is modeled after that. And I'm going to allow Cheryl to go through the highlights of the plan for you. I know you have a copy of it, and you know, we're not going to read it word for word, obviously, but just the highlights so that you can better comprehend what it is, what we're trying to do. So with that, I'd turn it over to Cheryl.
Cheryl, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Chief. Good evening, Select Board members. Cheryl Snyder, Emergency Management Coordinator for the town of Brookline. As Chief Sullivan mentioned, the Office of Emergency Management is new, and we want to develop a very good, strong, strategic EM function for the town. And we want the board to be in agreement with the path that we have chosen to go down. As we all know, we have finite resources in town and in the world. In most states, emergency management is handled at the county level. That allows more resources to be available to do the planning necessary to be prepared for emergencies, particularly catastrophic emergencies. We are lucky in Brookline to have an emergency management office. Many towns in the area do not. Specifically nearby here, we have Needham, Quincy, and Somerville, and of course, Boston. Because we have finite resources, we've prepared this strategic plan, which discusses several paths, several goals that we think are most important to developing the emergency management function here in town. And I'll go through those rather quickly. Our mission is to develop and maintain a comprehensive emergency management program for the town. And our vision is a resilient Brookline, equipped to protect and empower its citizens, prepared to face any challenge, and able to recover swiftly and effectively from emergencies through proactive measures. There are 4 overall goals in this strategy to support the vision of developing and maintaining the emergency management function for the town. The first is to prioritize development and maintenance of the town's comprehensive emergency management plan, also known as the SEMP, and both hazard-specific and functional annexes of that overall plan. Our second goal is to ensure the functionality and staffing of the Emergency Operations Center, including development of asset management, resource management, and logistical systems. Our third goal is to develop and maintain a multi-year, town-wide, cross-functional emergency response training and exercise program. And our fourth goal is to seek and administer emergency management grants and other funding to support the vision and the mission that we have discussed here. So with that, I will take any questions that the select board might have.
Our chair has temporarily left the room, but I'm filling in. Anybody with questions? David?
In terms of your emergency response timeline objectives for FY25, you mentioned evacuation, and I'm wondering what is the current practice for informing the public, town employees, et cetera, what the evacuation routes are? How are people made aware of it? Where are those plans kept?
Chief, do you want to say something first?
Sure. Yeah. So we have multiple avenues of letting folks know that we would be doing an evacuation. There's two basic types of evacuation. There's area specific, and then there would be, in the event of some major catastrophic event, that there would be town wide or area wide, which would include other jurisdictions. For the most part, for a community like Brookline, it would be a specific neighborhood that potentially there was a hazardous materials incident that we would call to evacuate an area or a neighborhood or whatever the case may be. As we look at our operational plans, we would develop a perimeter, and then we would execute an evacuation. And in doing so, one of the things that we have been pushing for our members in the community is to sign up to Alert Brookline, which is our primary means of getting the information out very, very quickly. We can geofence Alert Brookline so that we're only hitting those folks who are signed up for emergency correspondences in a specific area, or we can do it townwide. There's also social media that works in correspondence with Alert Brookline. The messaging needs to be consistent, so people are not getting different messages from social media, and that's something that is very important, because the quicker we can get our message out and consistently, the less confusion there will be for folks who are getting on social media and getting their information perhaps not from a source that comes from an official source like emergency management, or from PD or FD or wherever the case may be, or their town administrator. So those are two of the areas that we have. In a lot of cases, it's just emergency responders going door to door and knocking on doors and saying, all right, we need you to either shelter in place, or we need you to move in this direction. So that's kind of the basic way we would get the word out. If it was a larger issue and we were in a regional evacuation, we would be through the town administrator coordinating with the heads of government in Boston and the surrounding communities for a region-wide evacuation, which is also part of an annex that we have. We've actually had exercises on that over the course of the last couple of years at the Metro Boston Homeland Security region level. So it's a comprehensive aspect of getting the word out and then putting people in motion. So I hope that answers your question.
Does, yes, thank you.
Paul?
Yep, thank you. And thank you for the overview, and also the details in the plan itself is very comprehensive. I wanted to move to goal number 4, which is gets into the funding and support of the vision and mission of the Office of Emergency Management. And there's some tasks in here that talk about planning and funding. I guess my question is, in FY25, it looks like you are creating, or you're advocating for the creation of an operating budget. I assume we don't have that yet, do we?
This is FY25.
Right. Yeah. So, but the budget, the plan for the budget, do we have a sense of what funding is going to be required going forward? Do we have a projection of costs?
We're working through that in terms of the what the FY26 budget is going to look like.
Yeah.
That'll be put out in the next, I would say, less than a month now. So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so again, I'm just trying to get my head around about how, as we were creating this office, this function, we have it in place, we seeded it.
Yep.
But it does seem to be skeletal right now, right?
I mean, and we are, the other thing that we do, and I'm sure the Cheryl can speak on this, is a lot of this work is grant funded. A lot of the work that we do here is particularly reliant on outside sources of funding, and we want to maximize that level. The good news is there are a lot of those things available to us, and it's not just, for example, UWASI, it's a lot of different sources that the whole EM team is very good at pursuing, and we use that to balance that out. So when we think of this as obviously, emergency response is a critical function, a critical team
Right.
function. So we make sure that
And
that's-
each department has a role to play because it's really cross-functional, but ultimately, we do need to fund.
yes, there is a core emergency management function that is
Right.
funded on line items in the budget.
Right. And we're counting on mainly grants for that.
I don't want to say, what percentage we're talking about, but yes, we rely, I would say the emergency management.
Excuse me, Regina, could you? Yeah, please do.
We rely on a combination of grant money and operating money in order to make this happen.
Okay.
Mike,
Following up on that, we're about to have a change of administration in Washington with a set of different ideas about federal budget, and I assume a lot of this money ultimately comes through the federal budget. And I think it, just as a caution, it would be sensible to think about what sources we might have if there's a drop in the amount of support that we get from the federal side.
Yes, and all I'd say on that is we're doing that work. I mean, Cheryl has done a lot of that work already in terms of risk analysis and assessment, and the chief, and all of us are working together to make sure that there's no disruption in our functions in the event of a change in federal policy that impacts our funding.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Let me, I assume this wasn't asked before I came back, but with respect to the question raised by in public comment, so we're going to be addressing issues of wildlife such as waterfowl, but also I assume coyotes, bears, and other animals in our operating plan. Could you sort of give us some sense of how that's going to what that's going to look like? I mean, I assume we're talking about protocols in the operating plan of how we respond if there's an incident such as happened at the Muddy River, but flesh that out.
So yes, again, I want to differentiate between this strategic plan and the operating plan, but there is a level of capability at the local level that we have to be cognizant of, and I'm very very mindful of mission creep when it comes to emergency management. And to make sure that we're not overstepping the operational capabilities or the functionality of our public safety departments, our DPW, and the employees that we get the vast majority of our support and operational capability from. When it comes to things like coyotes and bears and so on and so forth, those are operationally a part of the day-to-day operational protocols and policies and strategies of each of the departments that would have a hand in that. So in particular, the animal control officers and so on and so forth. Emergency management is for natural and man-made disasters that reach a certain level. And, we're very cognizant of trying to maintain where the level is. Sometimes it gets muddy, but no pun intended, but there is there's a differentiation between what is a day-to-day operational incident or event and what rises to the level of emergency management functionality. And so I just want to keep that in mind as we go through the discussion. When it comes to the public comment earlier, I've had discussions with Ms. Murphy over the weekend and assured her that we would be looking at all of our plans with regard to wildlife, as well as the domesticated animals that we deal with in a sheltering plan, and anything that would rise to that level, and where the town of Brookline resources can fit into that. A lot of what we do is facilitate, and we are the handshake between the local officials and federal and state officials, and that's where emergency management really makes itself a real asset. And so when it comes to these issues, there are state and federal assets and that are far more capable of dealing with the issues at hand, that we would just not necessarily have the internal capability to deal with. So as long as our plan is realistic, and that is that it includes the resources and that are at the fingertips of the operational folks and or emergency management, if it does rise to that level, that we can make those phone calls, get those assets on the ground as quickly as possible, so that we can start the mitigation process and take whatever steps necessary to reduce the impact of the incident. So yes, we're looking at what was the after action from the response to the Muddy River, and thankfully we had a wonderful program on Sunday where all of those geese and waterfowl were cleaned up and let go. We're always looking for improvement. We're always looking for alternatives to get boots on the ground and get folks in and starting that mitigation process as early as possible.
Any other questions? Thank you, Chief. Any other questions? John?
Chief, thank you so much. I keep thinking, all of us here and also people who might be listening at home, it's kind of hard to get your heads around, get your minds around this. What exactly are we talking about here? How do you plan for an emergency? What kind of emergency? And so on. I just want, if you don't mind, just take us back to the emergency that we're perhaps all most familiar with, which was when all of a sudden the world had to shut down because of COVID. And it happened to coincide with my first term on the select board. I and others had to conduct campaigns, virtually. We as a select board never met face to face in person for at least a year after I got elected. We had to figure out all kinds of new ways of doing things, but there also had to be someone in charge. And decisions were made early in that emergency, which I think might help people to kind of get a better understanding of what it means to have an emergency management plan. Because we couldn't let government just come to a halt, but we also couldn't let people gather in buildings. And we couldn't have meetings of the select board at the start of this, when certain decisions had to be signed off on by the select board. Well, if the select board can't meet to sign off on those decisions, what's our plan for, who will take charge of getting those decisions made? And there were decisions made, and I think you're quite familiar with them. You want to just talk about it a little bit and what we learned from it?
Sure. Thank you for that, John. It is a great example. It's kind of the other side of the pendulum, if you will, in the scale of emergency, disasters from, potentially 100 or 200 gallons of release of fuel oil to a global pandemic. But the process is kind of similar. If you look at the comprehensive emergency management plan, when it comes to the emergency management functionality, you look at the annexes, and that gives you a good indication of what level of incident, event, disaster, whatever you want to call it, is where the emergency management function kicks in. Otherwise, below that is generally the day-to-day operational folks who are doing the work. In the particular case that you're talking about, obviously, the time frame between when the assets at the federal level and even here in the East Coast, we're getting the idea that this is something bigger than just a small breakout on the West Coast. We had a little time to develop, and we were meeting about 3 weeks prior to the disaster emergency declarations that were declared at the federal and national level. We were meeting at the local level. and starting to develop our response and what our capabilities were, what our resources were, what expertise we had. I will give, I'll give a shout out to Dr. Jett, the former public health commissioner, who had been raising the flag about a global pandemic for a number of years, professionally and locally, and no one saw it coming except for our public health director, and he did. It was one of those times where I think he was saddened to be spot on. But when it comes to taking charge, so to speak, when there is a local or a federal disaster declared, it is drawn out in the laws of the Commonwealth and federal laws as to how that impacts the ability of local government to be more nimble in the event, like you said, where the select board can't meet face to face and decisions need to be made. Mr. Kleckner at the time, as the town administrator, had many years of experience as a professional town administrator, and he was able to navigate those waters pretty quickly and get right on the emergency declarations and start to decentralize or centralize the government and the decisions, understanding that at the end of the day, it is ineffective sometimes to have to wait for the wheels of government to turn in their normal functional way, going to the select board, getting you all together in a quorum. We didn't have Zoom then. We didn't have, and there were statutes, and we had to get the governor to kind of waive the public meeting laws so that you folks could get together and you could make decisions. And but meantime, the operational folks who are qualified in dealing at that level, basically at that point, it was the emergency management function as well as the public health function, with cooperation from obviously all of the other departments in town as part of the emergency management team. We were able to start to make those decisions early, and we were a model in Brookline for a lot of things. So they were, as a small community, there were much larger communities with a lot more resources and assets that were looking at us and going, "Hey, where did you come up with that?" And we just kind of went, "Well, experience and just this is what makes the most sense." And we were able to, I think we were able to navigate that pandemic with a great deal of success. Even the tragedy as it was, the overall outlook was a success.
Thanks.
Paul.
Yeah, and and thank you, Chief, for that comprehensive answer. And thanks to John for asking it. And this question is related to it. It's the things that the big things that are the scariest, right? The complete failure of the water system or contamination of the water system. The complete failure of the electric grid. It's a regional issue. Perhaps, some other type of very disruptive regional issue that would disrupt, primary sources of water, food, heat, health. And it sounds like we've already kind of dealt with the health one a little bit. As part of this strategic plan and this, do you do scenarios? Are we prepared, and have we walked through what we would do if we lost the availability of clean water because of some contamination or failure of the water system?
So I would say at the local level, probably not. That we would be part of the regional response, and it wouldn't be specifically to Brookline. We are at the Boston Homeland Security, Metro Boston Homeland Security level. We're always updating those plans and have those things in mind as we go through that process of regional planning, and certainly with our friends at MEMA and even FEMA, those questions are constantly being analyzed, and what capabilities. We wouldn't necessarily have the individual capabilities of mitigating or actually
you know,
Right, but we
being,
would,
being part of it.
we would be involved in it, right?
We would,
So, I mean, we're the
yes.
last mile, right? So
Right.
are we at least, do we work and are we in coordination? And do we at least understand what the state national response would be to some significant regional failure like water, or the electric grid or the fuel supply or the food supply?
I would say that in the national strategy sense, we are, because we are, and I can tell you that, you know, since 2001, and COVID and the foresight of the select board and the town to actually put together an emergency management function that has the capability of working day to day, as opposed to the ad hoc kind of, we just respond to winter storms emergency management function we had previous to that. And Cheryl gave you a list of, you know, there's only 4 or 5 communities in the greater Boston area that actually fund emergency management at a level, even the limited level that we're funding it at. And so, you know, we are engaging every month, every quarter with MEMA and with our FEMA counterparts, and those are the pressing issues at the federal and state level. And so, yes, we are far more involved and prepared to be able to act in a manner that is in coordination with any federal or state response than we were just a few years ago.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Chief.
Yep.
Okay, any further questions or discussion? So Chief, we really appreciate the presentation and all that you're doing. That's a lot more complex than I think many people realize, but you know, way more important than people realize also. So we're next going to vote on the question of approving the Emergency Management Program Strategic Plan. Any questions about that?
And
Okay.
just as a matter of course, Mr. Chair, that, you know, this is not a static plan. This is not, you know, this is what we're going to do for the next 5 years. We will be reviewing this plan, and as we are able to meet some of these goals, maybe they get shifted, you know, from FY26 to 27. It's a dynamic document, but it's giving you what our vision is at this point. So, you know, it's not static. I just want to make sure everybody understands.
Bernard,
And we're giving you the authority to move forward with that dynamic plan. Yeah.
so Bernard, just to follow on my comment, and again, this is not a criticism at all. It's in the spirit of it's a dynamic plan. I think it would be helpful to have some clarification or even specifics around this issue around regional severity, right? So something of the magnitude of we lose clean water, we lose the electric grid, we lose access to transportation for food sources. I mean, these are the things that should keep us really, really up at night, because it affects, you know, thousands of people, and the very people that would help us and respond are also being affected as well, similar to what happened with COVID. I'm not saying that should be added right away, but I do think adding a section or an objective or an activity that is a periodic and regular coordination and check-in with, you know, regional, state actors and emergency folks to understand how we would work in collaboration with them, that would be really helpful to have included in this.
Sure.
Yeah, wouldn't that be in the draft? Wouldn't that be in the annexes that you're putting together?
It is to a certain extent. And, you know, that's why it is so wholly important that we stay involved with the MBHSR and our, you know, and at the EMD level with MEMA and FEMA. The plans that you're alluding to, Mr. Warren, are available at the federal level, and Cheryl and I will research those and get those to the select board so that, you know, you have an idea at least that, you know, it's not just me saying that this is a priority for the federal government and the state government, that you see that background work for in a lot of cases, it's prevention. right? I mean, it's what is the federal government doing to prevent bad actors from having
Yeah.
access to those
Well,
things?
yeah,
And
Okay.
that's
yeah.
way beyond us, but it does go further down into response and mitigation.
Okay, Chaz, did you have a?
No, I just wanted to emphasize what the chief is saying here, and also what Bernard has said about the hazard annexes, which talk about the issues that we might face and the kind of interaction there. But it's a point well taken.
Okay, right.
And we are, you know, as the chief said, we're not just part of these governmental conversations. We're an integral player, and I think that speaks again to what the chief talked about with COVID. You know, we've learned a lot, and we are viewed as a model with other communities. So it's good to be part of that conversation.
And you mentioned the operational plan, and that's a separate plan that we're going to deal with sometime in the future. Is that an update of an existing operational plan, or?
That's correct. So goal number one is to get the 2025, and it's in draft version, and it's being reviewed right now by the emergency management team and the executive team of emergency management, as well as the entire emergency management team. We will go back and we'll address the issues that were brought up surrounding the wildlife issue, and make sure that our annexes are updated to address whatever concerns we might and capabilities we might have there. But that is in your objectives on page 7. You'll see that FY25 is to finalize the 2025 version of the SEMP plan. The SEMP plan has been in the past about a 400-page document that lived in a 4-inch, 3-inch, or 3-inch binder in the back of somebody's car or on a shelf somewhere. It has been remodeled by FEMA and MEMA to be a much more streamlined document and more functional for the operational folks, so that you can just go in, and obviously that with digitization, it's much more available to our unified command posts and our incident commanders to be able to pull up an annex and go directly to that annex and see what the next steps are. So
As long as you have electricity.
yeah, well, but
Right.
we also have batteries, so that's good too.
So the SIMP plan is the operational plan, is that what?
It is.
Okay.
It is.
The SIMP library.
Yeah, that's what is in.
See on my desk in my office is the 1995 plan.
And to your point, Paul, is we specifically download the plan to the hard drive of the computer, so that we're not reliant on the internet or Wi-Fi or even in this case electricity, so that it's available on the hard drives in our cars and in the patrol cars and the supervisor cars anyway, and where it needs to be.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I think you understand.
Okay, let's move on. Okay, so I'd like to move the approval of the Emergency Management Program Strategic Plan for 2025 to 2030. All in favor, please. Any questions about that? No. Any further questions? No. Okay, all in favor, please indicate by saying aye. John Van Scoyac.
Aye.
Michael Sandman.
Aye.
Paul Warren.
Aye.
David Perlman.
Aye.
And chair votes aye. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Cheryl, thank you. And we look forward to receiving the SIMP plan and reviewing that in great detail.
All right.
Next, Center Street lots, question of establishing and approving a charge for the Center Street Lots Committee. I see Meredith Mooney is at the podium, so please present what you have for us.
Certainly.
And introduce the person behind you.
Yes, so that's actually my primary role this evening, is to introduce Zach Tessler, who's the newest member of the Economic Development Division. He joined our team back in September, really hit the ground running, helping to support the Chestnut Hill commercial area study, as well as the Economic Development Advisory Board's ad hoc subcommittee to support that study as well. And shortly after joining our division, Zach also received his certification, his AICP certification. certification as a planner. So we're very lucky to have Zach and his talents and experience. Zach is going to be staffing the Center Street Lots Committee and managing the Center Street Lot Study. And I'll turn it over to him to give a update on the project and answer any questions or issues that might come up in your discussion about the draft charge that we included this evening.
Okay, thank you all for your time this evening. It's a pleasure
And
to
it's
be here
Zach
with you all.
Hessler?
Yes, Tesler, Tesler.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for your time this evening. I have, I think, a few updates and a kind of brief recap to start us off. So as you all are probably familiar, this work grows out of one of the long-term economic development and long-term planning divisions ARPA-funded projects, the first phase of which was the Coolidge Corner parking and curb use study, which we're currently wrapping up. And then sort of as that project tamps down, phase 2 is going to be kind of coming off of the ground. So phase 2 being the Center Street Lots exploratory study, which has been funded by ARPA in the amount of $225,000. So some updates since Meredith was here last to discuss the project with you all. We finished contracting with a really wonderful consultant team a few weeks ago, which is being led by Spec Dempsey in consultation with Stantec, who was leading the Coolidge Corner parking study, as well as Eisenberg Projects on tactical urbanism and site activation. And we're here today to present a draft charge to you all, which would empower a select board appointed committee to study the lot and make recommendations regarding its future, including by vote if appropriate. The committee will be chaired by Select Board Member Mike Sandman. And the application process we foresee hopefully opening later this month, taking about 3.5 weeks, after which time we'll get the committee up and running. Staff will submit some recommendations, and we're happy to work with the select board on the application process. Speaking towards timeline more broadly, we're hoping the study will last just over or approximately 1 calendar year, though the committee's work might extend beyond that point, in the hope of selecting either one preferred scenario for the future of the Center Street lots, or possibly working on further study of several preferred scenarios. So with that, we're really excited about this project. We're excited to get the committee up and running and to be working with Mike on this project as we are on Chestnut Hill. And with that, I welcome your questions and any feedback you may have either on the project or on the committee that we're hoping you will appoint over the coming weeks.
Great. Any questions from the board? I think the charge is very well done and clear, and going to be great. Paul.
Yeah, I have a couple of, first I have a comment, then I have a couple of questions. So first is, we are specifically making this a public body. It's a voting body. It's reporting to the select board, this committee, correct? It's not
Correct.
like the other
Like
one,
Chestnut Hill
the other
Select
one
Board
that you're
one, right.
doing, right,
Yeah,
which has raised a lot of concerns,
Right.
a lot of concerns. So that's great that it's public. Can we talk a little bit about some of the scenarios that what is the breadth? I mean, is this a blank slate and this thing could be another 20-story hotel, or are we talking about getting rid of a parking lot and turning into a park? Is it going to turn into housing? I mean, what are the scenarios that we're talking about, and are we putting any boundaries on them?
Well, I think the charge sort of limits.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's what
yeah.
the charge is.
I mean, limits how far out of bounds it's
Right.
going to go. And
Yeah,
I
but
think
so,
it's pretty.
I don't think that the committee is going to come back with a suggestion of a swimming pool with a hockey rink above
good.
and parking below. I mean, this is the Center Street lot has been I'm not sure when the Center Street lot was built, but it's certainly in the 50s, I think.
Yeah.
And ever since then, there have been discussions about doing all sorts of things with it, double decking it, creating a mechanism so that you could support stores facing it, as opposed to having the back of the stores that are on Harvard Street. And in the past, it ran into neighborhood opposition.
Yeah.
The neighborhood has changed. And so maybe we won't see as much of that, but it's pretty well, as a practical matter, there's so much attention to that, that it's very unlikely to come back with something wild.
Well, and again, well, that's what I'm trying to understand is I don't see, and maybe I'm just not reading it.
Well, the town policy objectives on the second page
Yeah.
lays out sort of the parameters of what they're going to do. And I mean, I'm impressed by the fact that they address all of the issues that I think are really critically important in a piece of or site that large. So,
and by the way, I think I think it's worth saying that that this is put together by Zach, and I know Meredith had a look at it, and I had a look at it, but this is the thought process of the staff member who's going to be.
It's okay for me to finish my thought. So, and again, I want to just explore this a little bit further around what, because I don't necessarily know how much constraint we should put on it. So, I mean, can this lot turn into mixed use, commercial and housing? Would we do that?
it makes sense.
With this charge?
I think about what it is. It's a parking lot.
Right.
And so.
That we own.
Yes, we own the parking lot, there's no question. One of the constraints certainly is that it's a very important component of providing parking.
Right.
In Coolidge Corner, and without that parking, I think the Coolidge Corner commercial area would be in serious difficulty. So at the very least, you can assume that parking is.
It has to remain.
It's not quite sacrosanct, but it's.
But it would be a component of something other possibility that would be.
But anything else has to be has to be done above it, around it, something of that sort.
David, I'm sorry, Chaz, you want?
No, go ahead, David.
I read this similarly to Paul. I'm not seeing any constraining language that says it absolutely has to be parking. I think likely parking will be a significant component of whatever gets presented ultimately. I'm personally fine with having that flexibility in the charge, but the way it's currently written, so for example, toward the top of the second page, last line, the committee will identify and adopt a vision for the site, including desired uses, and articulate further actions necessary to realize the vision which has been adopted. That's pretty open-ended, and that open-ended language appears multiple times in the charge. There's mentioned somewhere else about potentially improving the tree canopy. I personally think it's a good idea to have that kind of flexibility. I certainly would want to see parking being a significant component, but I'm not against the idea of exploring mixed use there.
Right.
And let's hear what the community.
So this charge does allow for that, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, because it has that open end. But again, I think we're redirecting folks to the bottom of the first page of the charge, the town policy objectives. Mixed use housing isn't in there, right? The policy objectives that are being advanced there are multimodal accessibility, community and public gathering space, commercial area vibrancy, connectivity for pedestrians, cyclists, and motorists, green space and urban canopy, climate sustainability, and resilience. Doesn't say mixed use in there. So is that a possibility? Yes, because the charge is open-ended enough that if that's the direction the community takes it in and those objectives are still met, then maybe that would come up. But I think to Mike's point, it would be difficult to imagine a situation where, unless that's where the community takes it, that's where it winds up.
Well, but
Okay.
I mean, I'm sorry. It's this is a discussion. This is a huge deal, Bernard. It's going to take some discussion. So, because this is a tremendous opportunity for the town, a tremendous potential opportunity to do something with a very significant piece of land that the town owns. I don't know what all the options are. I do think it's important that we retain parking because it's critical to the vibrancy of that area. But there's also a great opportunity for maybe additional housing, maybe additional senior housing, maybe additional affordable housing.
So what's your objection to a fairly broad?
I actually don't. I'm trying to understand, does this enable a broad set of options?
Okay.
Right. That's what, it was unclear to me.
Understood your concern.
Okay. That's what I'm asking.
I just want to add that under the town policy objectives, there are 6 bullets and only one of them mentions parking. So yes, parking I think would be a significant component. I would expect to see that, but I agree with Paul. I like that this is going to be an open-ended charge and we'll hear from the community about what the community values for that site.
Okay. Any other questions before we vote?
Do we need to add a bullet that says specifically that consider potential housing options?
Yeah,
Zach, what are
I
your
think-
thoughts there?
Speaking on all of where your conversation is going, I think we intentionally tried to leave this very open-ended to be a really community-driven visioning process. That being said, we do have these town policy objectives, and certainly it is a wider town objective to increase housing choice and affordability. So speaking as Zach, I certainly don't have any problem with sticking that in. On the other hand, I really defer to the community and on the whole would be most comfortable with just seeing what the community has to say during the engagement process. And I also do just want to clarify on the point of parking that this study really did grow out of not only decades of study, as the board has pointed out this evening regarding the Center Street lot, but also quite a thorough process that we've just been through with Stantec to understand the parking in Coolidge Corner. And we've actually reallocated $25,000 basically of funding that could have gone towards this round of the project towards basically a continuation of Stantec's work to understand more fully if there were to be any interventions regarding the Center Street lot. Are we to double parking or take half of it away or take 10 spots away or whatever? There would be some additional scenario planning that goes in before we even have this conversation to really get a better understanding of how the parking plays out if we start to reconfigure the Center Street lot. So certainly parking will be top of mind in this conversation.
Paul?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm gonna stay on this for a little bit, Bernard. So this also coincides with the comprehensive plan, right? So this specific new initiative will be, you're expecting to conclude when?
I'm expecting to conclude May 3rd.
Right. But when is this study supposed to be? Do we know when the study you're targeting to be done by?
March 31st, 2026.
26.
Right.
We're targeting that the staff-led process will run approximately for this calendar year with a little wiggle room.
I guess I would encourage some language or integration with what's coming out of the comprehensive plan. Because the comprehensive plan is also getting at priorities for the community, longer term. This is a longer term project that is consistent with what we're doing for the comprehensive plan. I'm not saying kick it to the comprehensive plan, but certainly it should leverage and be integrated with the learnings from the comprehensive plan. How do we do that?
May I also just add, so it is an ARPA funded project.
Yeah.
So we have the constraints of needing to spend those ARPA dollars by a certain time. We now have a contract with and I think, we sort of anticipated that it's very likely that we could get to the end of this scope of work and sort of laying out a set of options where it would take the community longer to decide on what the preferred option, the direction would be.
Yeah.
So I think we look at this as where we're setting the table for what could potentially be a longer term conversation in terms of making a decision, a commitment, if we're going to go in a different direction with the Center Street lot.
Yeah, this is not inconsistent with the comprehensive plan will be done by the end of this year. So it's consistent, right?
Yeah. Mike, you have your hand up?
I'm just thinking that
Okay.
it would be really, as with Chestnut Hill, it'd be very sensible to have a formally a member of this committee that either reports to the and is aware of what's going on in the comprehensive plan study committee or vice versa, so that you have an open channel.
Yeah.
I do think the integration of that between the comprehensive planning process is really important. I also don't want to be in a situation where, again, the comp plan's vision is so much bigger and so much more about the broad strokes of what we want the community to look like. And then there is this, which is very focused on a specific area that needs to be informed by what the comp plan is what is coming out of the comp plan. So I think as this process develops, making sure that it is dialed into the comp planning process and is not ignoring what's coming out of that, but is working in parallel with it, is going to be critically important.
Okay, anything else?
Just still not convinced, but
it's
it's okay.
thought about
It's not
that.
convincing.
I guess one,
It,
go ahead. I'm going from the experience of what's going on at Chestnut Hill.
right. Well,
And that's not going well, Mike.
I'm not sure what your impression is of that experience, but the comprehensive plan. So people talking, and people, we talk about Brookline. One of the and you know what the issues are in Brookline that it seems to me belong in a discussion of the comprehensive plan. One is the changing demographics of the town, how demographics have changed over the last 20, 30 years, and the extent to which we think that we can plan to direct the direction of the demographics. Can we add workforce housing? Can we, if we can't, what, then what? It's the character of the community that is going to be looked at, considered, shaped by, hopefully shaped by what comes out of the comprehensive plan. I think when you start to get into what to do with a particular parking lot, or this is not.
Well, it should be.
I think you're trying to boil too much of the ocean.
No, I'm not. What I'm sick and I'll go back to my original comment about the comprehensive plan. I think this project should certainly understand and be in communication integrated with what the comprehensive plan is learning about what the community's priorities are. Because there's very few pieces of property like this that we actually have control of, right? There's other properties on Harvard Street that we don't have ownership of that are significant lots, but we actually have control of this space. And I'm just saying that it should be the potential options for that space should include what we're hearing from the community, from the thousands of people responses that we've gotten as to the priorities around green space, transit-oriented housing, affordable housing, senior housing, more options, commercial development. That's what I'm saying and what I'm strongly suggesting.
Except that, I mean, whatever comes out of this, parking has to remain.
I agree with you.
The central.
I agree.
Use of that property.
It's in the charge. So, okay.
Okay. So, okay, I'd like to move on and move to approve the charge for the Center Street Lots Committee. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. John Van Scoyac.
Aye.
Michael Sandman.
Aye.
Paul Warren.
I'm going to abstain.
David Perlman.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Thank you.
Thank you for your time tonight.
Okay.
Thank you. Welcome aboard.
Pardon.
Mhm.
Oh, yeah, welcome aboard.
Absolutely.
Next, 2025 Annual Town Meeting, setting the dates for the Annual Town Meeting. Who do we have to present that? Is Melissa?
Melissa's on.
Good evening.
Melissa.
Yes, I'm here.
Good evening. Sorry to keep you so long.
No worries, no worries. Interesting discussion for sure. You have in your packet a draft schedule for the 2025 annual town meeting. We've been talking about this with the moderator, and I know the town clerk was away, but I'm sure he won't mind that we are scheduling it a week later than another option would be the 20th of May. But we're currently looking at a town meeting date of May 27th, which is a Tuesday. This means that if that is the date that you choose, we would be opening the warrant on January 29th and closing it on February 26th. We have a 90-day requirement now for the annual town meeting. One thing to note in the draft schedule that's in your packet is that the schools have reached out and expressed that they have commitments for the high school auditorium on May 29th, which is Thursday. So that will no longer be available to us, which means that we would then, after exhausting the dates that are currently on the schedule, we would be looking at potentially, if we went 6 nights, hopefully we won't need it, June 10th would be the additional night. So looking tentatively at town meeting on the 27th, 28th, 3rd, 4th, 5th, and possibly 10th if necessary. And so the draft schedule, and happy to answer any other questions you might have. Also, just to remind the board that right now we are kind of preparing as if We know that there's a potential that the current legislation that allows us to hold hybrid town meetings is still it's set to expire in March, and we don't have any other legislative proposals that would extend that. So at this point, we're preparing as if we may need an in-person meeting, but we're hopeful that there will be an extension of the current legislation to allow for a hybrid option.
Any questions with that amendment to what's in our packet? I move approval of the annual town meeting dates, including the opening of the warrant on January 29th and closing of the warrant on February 26th, both Wednesdays. Yes.
I just have one question, and it's not because I'm opposed to this proposal, but is there a reason why we're avoiding Mondays?
Yeah, it's tradition.
Yeah, it's just a long tradition that town meeting's been starting on Tuesdays, so.
Okay.
Okay. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. John Van Scoyac.
Aye.
Michael Sandman.
Aye.
Paul Warren.
Aye.
David Perlman.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Finally, boards and commissions appointments. Naming committee, Helen Charlupski of the school committee. Any discussion or objection to appointing Helen Charlupski? Seeing none, all in favor, please indicate by saying aye. John Van Scoyac.
Aye.
Michael Sandman.
Aye.
Paul Warren.
Aye.
David Perlman.
Aye.
And chair votes aye. And with that, unless there are any public comments out there in the audience, I will close the meeting at 10 minutes until 8.
Excellent.
We did a great
Close
job.
to a record.